Good afternoon, everybody. Hi there, everybody, and welcome to another series from our webinar series. Obviously, we run these on a month-by-month basis just to cover off different aspects and different elements of content that are relevant to what's going on in the industry at the moment. And this session today is all focused again around the apprenticeship units. Obviously quite a hot topic at the moment, and an element of subject and content that hasn't been brilliantly publicised by the government. So it's just really making sure that everyone is aligned and understands what we're looking at the moment. I suppose a couple of things we like to just qualify. First and foremost is we ask that there's no sort of AI recordings. What we do ask is, obviously, this is a mix of content, a lot of it drawn from the government website, a lot of it drawn from the information that we're aware of, and the development of programs that we're doing here in Peter, and some of it's shared speculation for industry bodies. So we just need to sort of clarify what we're working with, and it's important to caveat some of this with this information. I will make sure I caveat so you can clarify what is actually qualified and accurate information and what current thinking is or what proposed policy is. Obviously, all the information comes through the government channels, so it can be quite convoluted and some of the information challenging to disseminate. Now, this is being recorded, and the whole idea then is we host it on our YouTube channels. It will go up in the next day or so, and then obviously you can return back to it and we can share it with other professionals from the industry looking at these units. Any questions that you've got, pop them into the chat, and then what we'll do is we'll pick them up at the end. And then obviously we can discuss them. And if there's anything else you want to know and we finished the webinar, I wish I'd have asked that, just drop myself an email or drop an email over to one of your account managers or another member of the Peter team, and we will support you how we can. So let me just start by sharing my screen and we can get this up and running. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be covering off the apprenticeship units, talking about the fitting and assembly unit. And it comes across two disciplines. So there's two different units that have been launched by the government. The first one is an electrical fitting and assembly unit, and the second one is a mechanical fitting and assembly unit. There's a lot of opportunity around this unit. It's all about investing in the skills of your engineering workforce. And very much designed to cross-skill individuals who have typically been educated in the engineering sector already. So the content has been drawn from the Engineering Operative Level 2 programme. Now, historically, there was always a mechanical pathway and an electrical pathway. So there's lots and lots of content there that the government have drawn on to create two completely separate apprenticeship units. Now, if we reflect against the current audience, the content for the current engineers, it's very much about individuals who've got a competency in one discipline, either being electrical or mechanical, who are looking to achieve that cross-skill capability. So it's a great opportunity to create that multi-skilled workforce that I think is in high demand at the moment, and obviously offer that ongoing developmental opportunity to your engineers, just to create that sort of investment feel in the engineers in your team. Like I mentioned, it's considered a level 2 programme, and the maximum funding is £1,650 per delegate. The funding is built in a very, very different way to the apprenticeship programme. If you know about how apprenticeship programmes are funded, training providers will only receive 30% of that fee upon completion of 30% of the programme, and then the remainder of that fee was drawn out either out of your levy pot or funded by the government. The other 70% is paid upon completion. Skills England have outlined that the course can only be completed in a minimum of 70 compliant delivery hours. So just be wary of anybody sort of offering this at a lower level or in and around those 70 hours. It's quite a lot of content. Quite a significant volume of content in regards to the programme that needs to be covered off within those 70 hours. And what's important is every single delegate who attends an apprenticeship unit must pass an assessment at the conclusion of that unit, and I'll go into a bit more detail. And that assessment is delivered by the training provider, and I'll go into a bit more detail about how Peter are building that assessment process for these apprenticeship units. So let's take a deep dive into the actual content itself. And obviously, we're very, very keen to make sure you're aware of the learning outcomes so that anyone who is enrolling onto the program has a clear idea of what the course is designed to achieve. Let's have a look at the electrical one first. So the information from the government website it's been designed for existing employees, engineering operatives and technicians who, with the support of their employer, need to upskill in electrical fitting and assembly. So it's obviously, as I mentioned earlier on, about cross-training and cross-skilling into electrical disciplines. Typically, their mind thought is from a mechanical background into electrical disciplines. But the key learning outcomes, in summary, it's all about demonstrating the ability to apply health and safety legislation, regulations and safe working practices to all electrical fitting and assembly activities, whilst accurately interpreting things like electrical specifications, drawings, technical documentation, effectively being able to plan and organise work using sort of prioritisation and time management skills, selecting and using the right tooling and equipment for each task. And the competence there is all about wiring and routing, terminating a range of electrical cable types, carrying out standard electrical fitting, assembly and assembly, sort of safely and in line with required standards. And then obviously having a bit of experience in conducting testing during and after those assembly activities, as well as identifying, diagnosing and resolving faults within electrical fitting and assembly outputs. So that's kind of the summary of those learning outcomes. Quite a detailed programme. If we look at the mechanical one, ironically enough, the government clearly didn't want to write a new original document, and they've lifted a very, very similar learning outcome and summary in regards to it, but taking it from an engineering slant, from an electrical slant, and started to apply it to a mechanical slant. So this again is all about that demonstration of health and safety regulations, but obviously orientated now more around mechanical fitting and assembly. Again, talking about effectively planning and organising. But what's interesting here is it then takes the slant more into accurately measuring and marking out materials in preparation for assembly work, safely carrying out that mechanical fitting and assembly operation. And then what he also does is leans more into the identification and diagnosis of faults. So kind of touching on an element of the maintenance side of that as well, but obviously making sure it's leaning into that sort of assembly and fitting element primarily. If I move on to how Peter are delivering it, as you guys are probably aware, we were fortunate enough to be recognised as one of those strong providers who were invited to deliver the units. Alongside the AI units that we're delivering, these programs we've started to map out for delivery throughout the rest of the year. So our current planned cohort schedule, can't say that very quickly, is to launch the mechanical fitting and assembly program first. So our first cohort is scheduled for August. I'm pleased to tell you that we do have a number of enrolments already on that August cohort. So if you're keen to look at some of your individuals enrolling onto the August cohort, you do need to get them registered ASAP. And getting them enrolled onto those programs, because a number of those spaces have already been spoken for. And then obviously we have a cohort in November, and then moving into 2027, we've got one planned for January and one for April as well. So that's kind of the next 12 months or so of what you're looking at in regards to that schedule. In regards to the electrical fitting and assembly, we don't anticipate as much demand. So we've got a program schedule for November, and we have a program schedule for April. And again, we already have individuals earmarked in spaces for the November cohort. So again, if you're looking to get individuals enrolled onto that program, I would suggest you move quickly and get them enrolled ASAP. We're only taking a maximum of 16 on each cohort, and we want to make sure that obviously the learning experience is of the highest quality, and obviously everyone has access to the equipment in the workshops that we're working on. So the cohorts are not going to be enormous. And they're very much structured in a way to make sure that learning outcome is as positive as we possibly can. Moving on then, let's talk about the delivery model itself. First things first, it's all going to be face-to-face learning. This early adopter program will be face-to-face learning in the workshop. We are not considering a virtual program on this unit, obviously, because it's a very practical unit, whereas some of the other units that we are delivering will be looking at a 2027 virtual program. This will not have a virtual program. So obviously your learners will need to commute to our Havant Engineering Centre to attend these programs as part of that delivery schedule. The delivery model would be 12 days of workshop learning. So as I mentioned earlier on, the minimum learning hours are 70. We've looked at the content of that program and decided that 70 probably isn't quite enough to get the quality of the educational outcome that we want. And so what we've actually proposed is an 84-hour learning process, which is 12 days of workshop learning. Obviously, from our point of view, we don't get paid more for delivering those hours, but we want to commit more hours to maximising that learning outcome for your learners. Key thing we're going to be doing is we're going to try and keep it in a very, very similar pattern to the experience that we deliver in regards to our apprentices. So it's going to be a day release program, 1 day a week. So it'll be 12 weeks scheduled, and we'll just have a day release program, same day every week, over 12 weeks, where your learner will come into the engineering centre over in Havant and undertake their educational process, which is pretty straightforward stuff. The assessment, as I mentioned, every unit has to have an assessment. The assessment on the back end of this process will be in 2 tiers. The first element of that assessment will be a practical observation by a trained assessor. So that will be looking at a task or an activity that will be undertaken by the learner themselves at the end of the program that will be observed practically by a trained assessor and signed off to demonstrate competence. What we'll also be asking the learners to do is submit a written report to demonstrate their knowledge. And that's going to be a very, very simple written engineering report covering the elements of knowledge that they've learned over that 12-week course. So pretty straightforward. Again, very, very similar in the kind of experiences that your engineers have probably gone through in the past if they've been through any educational process, whether that be an old MVQ, whether that be a BTEC, whether that be an apprenticeship program. Those kind of activities are very, very similar to what they've probably currently undertaken in the past as part of their education. In regards to the course content itself, the electrical key topics that are covered, kind of the training provides a strong foundation for the electrical side in electrical principles, installation practices, safety requirements, all that are typically used within the electrical industry. It covers the history of electricity, key electrical regulations, British standard, the 7671. And obviously, as we mentioned, the health and safety procedures, including lockout and tagout. Knowledge is also developed in AC and DC theory, sources of electrical power and the key components used in electrical systems, alongside the safe use of tools, cables and termination methods. Practical skills, obviously that's one of the reasons we want these learners doing this, includes installation of lighting power systems, first and second fixes, electrical protection methods, electrical testing, installation design. There's elements there of motors, motor wiring, fault finding techniques, and obviously identifying and resolving faults as well is all covered off in the key topics that we deliver throughout that 12-week education process on the electrical standard. On the mechanical standard, training is developed with a strong understanding of mechanical fitting and assembly practices. Obviously, as we've mentioned, that focus on health and safety is really, really important, and safe working methods, but also the ability to be effective in planning and organising mechanical activities. The knowledge-based is looking at different types of maintenance and assembly operations, operational principles, power transmission systems, looking at materials commonly used with mechanical engineering environments. You're also looking at exploring causes and patterns of equipment failure, helping to build an understanding how mechanical systems operate and deteriorate over time. Some of the elements of the practical side of this course include safe and effective use of tools and equipment. Again, we've touched on mechanical fault location and diagnostics, the application of fault finding techniques to identify and resolve issues with mechanical assemblies and systems. You're developing skills required for fitting, for assembly, for inspection, for repair activities, all in line with those sort of typical operational requirements of a good mechanical fitter or somebody on the assembly line. So quite an extensive range of key topics and elements there that that fill that 12-week course for both of those different apprenticeship units. finally, how do people enroll them? First things first, we are typically expecting a high demand, so enrolment will not be confirmed for your learner until all the paperwork is complete, until there is a signed agreement of services. Now, in our signed agreement of service, there is a clause in the contract, and it's agreement from the employer that they will cover the cost of the remaining outstanding government-funded balance if the learner does not complete the course. Why do we do this? The margins on these units, as you could probably appreciate, are very, very slim, as they always are with government training. So from our point of view, we significantly lose money if we don't receive that last 70% payment on the back end. And obviously for an independent training provider supporting these government types of initiatives, it's really, really important that they are done in partnership between independent training provider and employer. What we're asking individuals is they must be able to attend a minimum of 80% of the scheduled days of the timetable that we supply you to enroll. If you can't commit to that, we invite you to enroll on the next cohort. So realistically, you can only really look to miss 1 day of learning. So if you're sat there and you're looking at the time and you know you've got a holiday in between, that means you're going to miss 2 or 3 weeks. We won't invite you to enroll on the cohort. We'll ask you to enroll on the next one where you can make that kind of commitment. There's a couple of pieces of key paperwork. So there is a learner application form that needs to be completed by your learner. Included in that, we do need to have a proof of identity, proof of residency, a right to work, and then we undertake a program suitability program. Now, the key thing about that is the government stipulates that there must be a minimum of 50% learning. So if your learner turns around and goes, oh yeah, I can do all that, tick, 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 they won't be eligible to enroll on the program. All learners must be 19 plus in age. All must be employed by your organisation. They must be a UK resident, and they must be delivering over 50% of their working hours in the UK. They're the key qualification criteria from employers before they consider putting delegates on these programs. And then once we have made all those checks, we will send out joining instructions. Once we've received all that application form back, we've made all those checks and we've qualified that your learner is eligible, we will send out the joining instructions from Peter, and your learner will then be confirmed on the cohort. The enrolments have already started, as I mentioned. Either feel free to drop an email over to myself, or you can just email Sarah Broughton, who's currently our enrolment officer on these programs, and just go directly to her, and she will send out all the application forms and the signed agreement of services and similar. You can engage with her directly. There's her email address, sbroughton@peter.co.uk, or feel free to reach out to myself or any of your account managers or recruiters. So that's kind of summary of the program. That gives you the information that you need. What else have we got coming up? Next week, for the first time, we're doing 2 webinars in a month. I'm delivering a webinar series on life after leadership apprenticeships. I don't know if any of you are aware, but the government, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to defund leadership apprenticeship programs. So it's really, really important that organisations don't drop leadership investment. And obviously, with the identification that leadership can impact businesses by up to 70%, it's really, really important that if you have engaged with them, there is a suitable solution for the future. And that webinar is very much about that and talks about the different options that are available. In addition to that, then I would like to draw your attention to the Peter podcast. We've had this running now since sort of February time or so, a huge range of really good quality podcasts talking about a huge range of different content, all in and around the L&D space, talking about the impact of apprenticeships and different elements of learning and development within different types of organisations, ranging from things like digital through to health and safety and similar. There's lots and lots there for you to go and check out. That is all on our YouTube channel, or you can check it out on Spotify as well, which is where we host our podcasts as well. So that kind of covers off everything that we wanted to discuss today. What I will do is let's just have a quick look at the webinar and see if there are any questions. If there's any questions, just quickly whack them into the chat. Someone's asked if it's possible to get an overview pack for both courses emailed over. Absolutely. Yes. What we can do is if anybody's interested in getting further information about the program, Please feel free to drop Sarah an email. We've got information about that. We can also send you the links to the government website where you can read in detail all the knowledge and skills, the breakdown in detail of all the knowledge and skills of both of those units as well. So you can really see in detail the content that we learned and gained by undertaking this kind of program. It doesn't look like there's any other questions. So off the back end of that, then I will thank everybody for their time. I look forward to potentially seeing a number of you next week at the webinar next week in and around leadership. And obviously feel free to get in contact with us here at Peter if there are any other queries or questions in around this or anything else. Fantastic stuff. Have a wonderful time then, and we will catch up with you later. Thanks. Bye now.